Hello and welcome, everybody. This is another bonus episode for Loot, Lore, and Lights. My name is Adam, and tonight we are talking about the HBO series The Last of Us. We are on episode 3 of 7. We are about halfway through the second season. And this was, even though it seemed like a slow episode, there was a lot in it. A good deal of things happen, and I like how it picked up pretty much right after the infected had attacked, and we're seeing the aftermath of Jackson, and we get this really intense scene with Tommy and Joel's body, and he's cleaning Joel's body. And for people watching the show, it's really heavy and really hard, I'm sure. You're still mourning a big character who was just freshly killed off. And to me, I'm sitting here like, all right, Gabriel Luna, it's your time to shine now. Let's see what Tommy's going to bring. Just knowing from somebody who had played the games and what Tommy's character, his I guess, arc from here is going to be. Immediately from there's a 3-month time jump. You can see they're fully working on repairing the wall, getting Jackson back up and running. You see Ellie is still not doing great. She was still, or I guess before the 3-month time jump, she was still in that same moment of the floor of this just mountain cabin where Joel had been killed. But now after 3 months, she's back to her sarcastic self. She's back to trying to be funny. She wants to get out of there. She is putting on this complete facade for the doctors because she knows as soon as she can get out of there, it's time to go try and avenge Joel. Of course, Gail is the one that comes to see her to check her out. And Gail is trying to figure out what it was that Joel wouldn't tell her. I have not been a super big fan of Gail's character in the show. It just, I don't know what it is. It makes sense. Don't get me wrong. Like having somebody that is a therapist for this big, impactful moment that just happened, especially, I think Tommy even remarks on it later. Like, I bet you are very busy right now with all the people grieving. And there is a need for it. It's just, I'm not a huge fan of it within the show. Ellie, there's another scene that they kind of reversed it from the way that it was with the games, where Ellie leaves there and she is immediately going to Joel's house. She's by herself. There were some differences, at least from a gaming perspective, where you go through Joel's house in the game. Dina's with you, and you see that Joel has held on to these sketches where Ellie has drawn Joel's face, and he's got them framed. He's got them set up. He's got pictures of Sarah and pictures of Ellie, his 2 children. It is a heavier moment, but I greatly appreciated they kept the jacket scene in there, where Ellie puts her face on the jacket, she smells it, it instantly brings back all these memories. She starts getting upset, tearing up. It's a moment where, I thought it was interesting to see the behind the scenes part where they said the people filming were tearing up as well. It's a heavy, heavy moment for a character that everybody loved, and there's a lot of flack that Bella catches over the way that, or I guess that she's playing Ellie, and a lot of people who are upset with how that is playing out. But Bella Ramsey is killing the role. She is doing an excellent job as someone who has played the games and is a big fan of the games. Yes, visually, she doesn't look like Ellie, but if you step back and just look at the series for what it is, she is nailing the role. She's bringing the emotion, the raw, just pain and grief, especially in this moment with the jacket scene. It was incredibly, daunting, I'm sure, for somebody knowing they've got to keep up with a different media that has a cult following. And she did an excellent job, I thought. She hears somebody call for her, she goes down, and it's Dina. This is different because in the games, Dina's already in the house with you, and she's waiting on you while you go upstairs. We'll get to the differences a little bit later. I'm just kind of stepping through the episode. She gives her cookies, and she provides the info for the Washington Liberation Front, or the Wolf regime that attacked Joel and put her to sleep, and eventually hurt Ellie. She basically tells her, we got to talk to Tommy. And they go to Tommy to try and figure out what to do next. And this part, to me, like, in the game, after Joel dies, you see a scene very similar to this, but Ellie she's got so much hatred and anger in that moment of telling Tommy, just like she does in the show, that if this happened to either one of us, Joel would be halfway to Seattle by now. And just her pure hatred and anger in the game, I thought came across a lot stronger than what it does in the show right now. And I wasn't a huge fan of that. And there's even more that happens right in this moment, because they go through and do he says, I'll get the council together and we can vote on it, and it has to be unanimous. This whole scene itself of trying to put together a council, I understand what, I think it was Mason said, that everybody had lost, not just Ellie, not just Tommy. Everybody had lost, and so it would have to be put to a vote. But this is, I think it just drowned out the characters a little bit for what they were in the game and how we know them to be. And so, they go ahead and go through with the vote. The vote's no. Eventually, Dina goes to Ellie, and she is, like, her ride or die. She's like, I'm going with you no matter what. All you had to do was ask, but even if you don't ask, I'm still going. Like, it's not an option. She gets all this great plan together, gets the supplies listed down they've got to take, and who ends up bringing Shimmer and the supplies around the corner at 3 a.m. when nobody's around to let them escape is none other than Seth. Hated this, did not like it, thought it was stupid. Didn't like the character for standing up in a rage trying to say they need to go after Joel. You've already proven that you have poor judgment, poor taste. Why in the world would I want this person trying to back me in the middle of a council meeting? But, is what it is. I hated that. And here's why. In the game, Tommy is telling Ellie, we are going to go. Like, there's no question. We are going after Joel's killers, and we're going to make them pay. But what I need you to do is I need you to give me 1 day. You give me 1 day to talk to Maria to try and acquire the supplies that we need, and to get the okay if we need people to go take down the people who came after Joel. If you can give me 1 day, we'll make it happen. Ellie, full believes him. Like, you've got 1 day, but after that day we're going, but I'll give you the day. And in the game, that day passes. She ends up going to Joel's house then, in which Maria comes in and interrupts her and says she got a note from Tommy, and it said to lock up the horses. It says, the note says to lock up the horses. It says to lock up all the guns and all the ammunition. Don't let Ellie leave. And he's sorry, but he's got to do this. He's got to go after Joel. And that is, like, Tommy's gone. Maria's still, she gets them supplies and she gives them Shimmer and lets them go under the guise of, you can go, but you got to bring my husband back in one piece. And it plays out so much heavier in the game on why Tommy is gone and what Tommy is capable of. I hated the fact they kind of robbed us of that in the series. So I guess we'll see what happens and what changes come forth with, as they start catching up to these different wolves. Some other things to note was that we got to see the Seraphites. They brought them in. You got to hear their whistle communications. There are so many different whistle lengths and pitches and everything else, and how they talk. And it's really neat. I'm excited to see how they expound upon that throughout the series, and if it plays in the way that it happened in the game. Just moving right along, Ellie and Dina, again, get Shimmer. They leave. They go to Joel's grave. it's kind of a moment for both the characters and the people watching to say goodbye to Joel at that point, right? They leave the coffee beans as a memorial and they are off. Thank goodness Ellie has Dina with her. She helps her identify that there's a storm coming. They take shelter, and the moment that we were robbed of when they are on patrol together, we get to see. And it's in the point of they're laying in the tent about to go to sleep, and Dina confronts Ellie wanting to know about the kiss. And it's a lot, I guess, more romantic in the way it plays out in the game, because Ellie tries to say something like it's an 8 and, it was really good or she enjoyed it. And Dina comes back as like, it was a 6. Like, I get it. A lot of people were watching. Ellie gets offended. And, it ends up with them being like, hey, let's try it over and see. And it really has a nice little romance scene between the two. Really adds to the chemistry that it seems like Isabella and Bella already have on screen. So, I'm excited to see where that goes to. But, flash forward next day or days later, they're traveling on. They end up coming across the slaughtered group of Seraphites, the ones that you're, soft introduced to a little bit earlier. Even the little redheaded child that is talking to her dad. Dina finds the slaughtered bodies of everybody in that crew and really shows just how ruthless Isaac is going to be once he's introduced next week. And something that if you played the games, you already know how much of a prick Isaac is. And it's setting it up to be the I guess, like, ultimate bad guy for right now. Not to say the Seraphites are all good guys. They're not. They did talk about their prophet and how she had been dead for 10 years, but she is still a big part of their religion. Looking forward to next week. It looks like we're going to get possibly a little bit more of a backstory. I'm wondering what is going to happen with the first wolf that they find, or the first person that is a part of the crew that, tortured Joel. Because in the game, and I'm going to tell you this is a spoiler for the game. So if you don't want to know it, stop here. Look forward to talking to you next week after next week's episode. In the game, the first one that they come across is a dead body who's been tortured, and Tommy had beat him to him. Now they're following Tommy's trail of dead bodies and people that he's tortured. I don't know if it's going to play out like that because we didn't have the scene of Tommy, like, knowing Tommy has left. And now it makes me wonder whether it is just going to be like a Ellie and Dina versus the world until later, when Tommy is actually out there, gunning as well in the game at this point. But that is pretty much it that I have from my notes for tonight's episode. There were a few parts that I loved, a few parts that I hated. Most of the parts I hated had to do with Seth, or the way that they didn't go with Tommy actually leaving to get out ahead to go hunt these people down. And I know my wife, I told her the difference with that, with Tommy bolting out, and she hates it because she's like, he has a son. Like, he can't just leave. But, Tommy it's very personal. They tortured his brother. He's going to go get his payback. So with the series, looking forward to seeing how they tie that in or don't tie that in, and seeing the differences. And we'll talk about that on here as we go along. But like I said, we are almost halfway through. There are only 7 episodes in this season. This was episode 3. Looking forward to talking to you guys after next week's episode 4 this Friday. Stay tuned. I do have an episode dropping for covering Grave Encounters, the found footage horror movie. I will be with the creator and host of Full Moon Empty Road podcast, Jeremy, and we had a good time on there, so I look forward to you guys checking it out. Don't forget, before you leave, subscribe. I do hope that you all have a wonderful night. Let's continue this adventure as we stay true to The Last of Us, comparing the game versus the series that's currently going on. Signal is weak, but the stories are strong. Take care.